Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the Women's Foundation for the State of Arizona 2022 Legislative Update. My name is Gauri Gladish. I am the Director of Research and Advocacy at Wfsa. As many of you know, Wfsa announced our expansion last year to tackle statewide inequities through an integrated and community-centered framework. As part of our expansion, Wfsa is hosting a series of listening tour events to hear from our stakeholders like you. So we are so glad to have you here today and welcome. Wfsa's advocacy has always had statewide implications and that we pursue legislative policies at the Capitol. First, I want to thank our amazing group of Southern Arizona advocates who have worked with us for years to advance legislation, and we are beyond thrilled to welcome advocates from around the state. So a huge hello and shout out to all of you. This work cannot be successful without your efforts, so thank you. Our goal at Wfsa is to make advocating for women and girls accessible and user-friendly for all advocates, regardless of location or experience. Throughout this afternoon's event, we hope to engage with you about our advocacy efforts and hear how we can make this work more accessible and engaging. Today, we'll be using an interactive polling tool to hear from you. So here are two ways you can access our polling platform. The polling platform we'll be using today is Slido. So to access the polling, you can either use your cell phone by scanning the QR code with your cell phone camera, and then click on the slido.com link that shows up on your screen. Or if you'd like, you can access the polling through an internet browser by going to slido.com and entering WFSA22, where it says enter code here. It's in like a blue oblong oval shape. So we'll give everyone a few moments to access the polling, and then we'll start off with a few questions. I know when I use my iPhone and scan the code, like a little yellow link will show up. So that might be the same for you as well. Great. So here we have our first polling. So the first question is, where are you joining us from? Are you joining us within the state? And if so, where? Feel free to scroll through on your whatever polling platform way you're using to find all the counties. If you're joining us from out of state, feel free to comment in the comments and tell us where you're joining us from. So it looks like we have people coming in from Pima County, Maricopa County, other. I'm curious where that other is. If you'd like, you can also tell us exactly where you're located. Right now I'm in Oro Valley, Arizona, which is just north of Tucson, pretty much part of Tucson. We'll give a few more moments to answer this question. Thanks for your responses. So it seems like we have the most participation right now from Pima County. Welcome all Pima County people, Maricopa County, and other. Again, I'm looking forward to looking into the chat to see where people are joining us from. All right, so let's go on to our next question. What is your experience with advocacy? Are you new to advocacy? Is this your first time joining advocacy efforts? That's not your first rodeo, but maybe you still have some learning to do, or you're an expert. You could probably teach me a few things. Great. So speaking of rodeo, in Southern Arizona, we have our Rodeo Days coming up, or also known as La Fiesta de los Vaqueros, or Celebration of the Cowboys. My kids will be home from school, a lot of other kids for the rest of the week. There's a big rodeo day parade here in Tucson. And also there's a huge rodeo held in the rodeo grounds. So pretty specific to the Southern Arizona, but I know there's other events throughout the state that are specific. So great. All right, so great. Looks like we have some advocates who've been doing this for some time. Excellent. Some new, and welcome. We're so happy you're here with us today. We also have some experts, but you can't take my job. Won't let it. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. Today, we are excited to share updates from the Capitol, the status of legislation we are following, and also some next steps for our advocates. We will hear from our essential partners at Goodman Schwartz Public Affairs, and we are excited to share updates on our website and point out some resources and links you can use to advocate for women and girls throughout Arizona. To start us off, I'm going to pass things over to Emily Raymond from the remarkable team at Goodman Schwartz Public Affairs, who'll be able to give us an update on the legislative session and timeline. So Emily, take it away.
Thanks so much, Gauri, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. As Gauri mentioned, my name is Emily Raymond, and I'm an associate with Goodman Schwartz Public Affairs, and we have had the pleasure of representing the Women's Foundation for a few years at the Capitol. And I'm looking forward to sharing some insight on the legislative session that we've had so far and where we're going from here this session. So I wanted to first start off with where are we in legislative session? We're approximately 50 days into legislative session. Ideally, it typically lasts about 100 days, but for those of you who this is not your first rodeo, you know that it will likely go much longer for the budget process. So far, we've heard bills in their originating chamber for 4 weeks. Last week was the very last week to hear bills in the committees in their originating chamber. So what that means is House bills must be heard in House committees, Senate bills must be heard in Senate committees, so they can then proceed through the legislative process. The exception to this 4-week situation is the Appropriations Committee, which receives 1 extra week of hearings, which is this week, and those took place on Monday and Tuesday. So if a bill has not been heard in committee at this time, it's effectively dead. So now this week, what we're currently in is called crossover week. So during this week, both of the chambers are spending a lot of times on the floor. We've already seen that this week. They're doing a lot of work to vote bills out of their entire chamber. So bills are being heard by the entire House and the entire Senate so that they can move to the alternate chamber to start going through the process over there. They're working really hard this week so that they can start hearing them again next week. So that's kind of where we are so far in legislative session, but I wanted to give you a perspective of what a lot of the conversation has been about. These bodies have been very consumed by a few time-sensitive items that had early March deadlines. And these issues have had major political impacts and challenges, so that's been very time-consuming at the legislature so far. Probably the biggest of these issues was related to spending for schools, and it was known as the Aggregate Expenditure Limit, AEL. You may have heard of this. Essentially, the legislature needed to pass legislation to raise the spending cap on schools' monies so that they can spend the dollars that were allocated to them last year. They were able to pass this measure on Monday through the Senate, and it had already passed through the House. So that has been accomplished through those chambers. Similarly, the legislature has been working hard to provide access, which is our state Medicaid authority, expenditure authority to spend money from the federal government for home and community-based services. So that's another one that had a time-specific limit. And there's also been a major effort around the Maricopa County transportation tax extension. That is time sensitive because proponents for that issue are hoping to get it on the ballot in November of 2022. So most of these issues are moving at this point and will hopefully be wrapping up soon. And once that happens, the legislature will have more time on their hands to start addressing many of the other bills that they have before them and to start working on those budget discussions that we've previously mentioned. So that's a perspective on what's been going on so far around those big issues. And I wanted to share a little bit of what comes next and what to expect. So from a session timeline standpoint, after this week, we're going to do an additional 4 weeks of committees. So bills that have passed out of a chamber will now have 4 weeks to make it onto a committee agenda in the alternate chamber. So House bills that have passed will now have 4 weeks to get on a Senate agenda and be heard in those committees. Concurrently with this process, we're going to start to see the majority start to focus on budget discussions and priorities. In the next few weeks, those conversations will start to pick up, and the majority will start to work with the governor's office to start roughing out a budget. One of the first steps in that budget process is deciding between the governor and the legislature how much money do they have to spend on this budget. And right now, their numbers are about $1 billion off from one another. So the first hurdle is going to be trying to get that to an agreeable place. Part of that is deciding what money is going to be ongoing and what money is going to be one time. So there's a lot to be worked out over the next few weeks or months with this budget. That's where we're at in the legislative session so far. There's a lot more to come and a lot more to monitor for us, but I'm glad I got to share a little insight and perspective on the legislature so far. So Gauri, I will pass it back to you.
Thanks, Emily. That's really fantastic insight and information. I'm excited to hear more about budget talks. So great. Thank you so much. And again, we are forever appreciative of your knowledge and your partnership. So thanks for being here today. Okay, so as we mentioned during our kickoff event in January, Wfsa has entered into our most ambitious legislative session yet by running 2 House bills and supporting other bills that provide social and economic supports for women. So what is going on with these bills? I'm going to first introduce House Bill 2111, which was actually our first bill to be introduced this legislative session. Alone in 2020, the Arizona Department of Child Safety received over 43,000 reports of child abuse and neglect. And as it stands, Arizona ranks 42nd out of 50 states for child well-being, with 50 being the worst ranking. And I think we can all agree that we can do better, and this is unacceptable. So this is why we are happy to work with our bill sponsor, Representative Blackman, on House Bill 2111. This bill seeks to reinvest $10 million from the state's general fund to the Healthy Family Arizona program. So now I'd like to give some details and outcomes from the Healthy Families Arizona program, so you can see just how important this program is to Arizona families. Healthy Arizona Family Program is a volunteer-based child abuse and neglect prevention program with important economic benefits for women and moms. It also provides home visiting services to at-risk families. The program saw state funding cuts during the Great Recession, so 2008, 2009, we all remember that time. Yet the program was able to maintain services through community and federal funding. So now it's time for Arizona to reinvest in this program, which has proven to reduce incidences of child abuse and neglect. So in fact, 96.3% of Healthy Family Arizona families have not reported child abuse or neglect for 3 consecutive years. The Women's Foundation knows that when women and their families have the tools they need to create a path of self-sufficiency, they will create it. Healthy Family Arizona programs focuses on the family unit and really takes a 2-generational approach to improving the social and economic outcomes for women and their kids. 99% of the program participants are birth mothers, many of whom are single parenting. So we have to ensure moms and their children have the ability to participate in this critical program. So in addition, rates of employment and educational attainment increase for moms while they're in the program. And kudos to the over 20% of mothers who completed additional education during the first year of their child's life. That first year is not easy, so big time kudos to these moms. More mothers also had full-time employment when they exited the program. So this bill, it's been very exciting and it has had excellent movement throughout the legislative process. It was first heard in the House in House Committee on Health and Human Services at the end of January. And on February 16th, it was heard in the Appropriations Committee and passed with 11 to 1 vote. So what should we expect next with HB 2111? The bill is heading to the House floor for a vote from the entire chamber. And assuming it passes the House floor, it will then go over to the Senate for committee hearings. Exactly as Emily was talking about the process and the crossover week that we're going into right now. So what's next for you? We'll be sending out a letter of support through the We Network that you can send to your representative before the House floor vote. This will be an easy copy paste into an email, so keep your eye out for that. Make sure to encourage your legislator to support this bill when it goes up for vote. And we really hope you're as excited as we are to see this movement on the bill. Things are really heading in the right direction, and we need to get this bill across the finish line. So we're looking for your continued support as it goes through the similar process on the Senate side. We also want to take a few moments to say a huge thank you to our community partners who have supported this bill and have rallied their advocates to support HB 2111, especially Children's Action Alliance, the Southern Arizona Advisory Committee, Child and Family Resources, and also the direct service providers who implement Healthy Families Arizona throughout the state. So thank you very much. All right, I got to catch my breath. That was a robust update on HB 2111, but a lot has happened in just this first part of the session. All right, so now on to our next bill. Our second bill to be introduced was House Bill 2534, and it was sponsored by Representative Daniel Hernandez. And this bill seeks to eliminate state taxes on feminine hygiene products and diapers for the next 8 years. So women spend an average of $18,000 on feminine hygiene products during their lifetime. So in Arizona, that's over 1,600,000 menstruating Arizona women between the ages of 10 and 54 having significant financial burden from feminine hygiene products alone. Each year in the state, this adds up to $8 million in tax revenue, and this is truly a gender-based tax. HB 2534 was introduced the first week of the session and was assigned to the House Ways and Means Committee. However, and here comes the frustrating part, despite our best efforts, we're disappointed that Representative Bullock, the chairwoman of the House Ways and Means Committee, did not hear this bill. And without a committee hearing, this bill is not likely to progress this legislative session. So, although the bill is stagnant, Wfsa believes this is an important discussion to continue, and we want to take a few moments to highlight why this bill is so important and why this topic is so important. So feminine hygiene products are necessary for menstruating people. The lack of menstrual products can lead to the inability to attend school or work, which puts a strain on a woman's learning and earning potential. In fact, 1 in 5 low-income females miss school or work due to lack of period supplies, putting additional economic and social stress on the person. Lack of adequate supplies can also cause serious health issues. Like feminine hygiene products, supplies for incontinence, such as diapers, are necessary for vulnerable populations, including babies and older people. Infants use an average of 2,100 diapers just in the first year of life. My children are way past that phase, but I'm definitely having flashbacks about all the diapers we had to buy. Parents have to provide enough diapers in order for their children or their child to attend childcare centers. So without the supply, parents are missing work or they're missing school and other opportunities. In Arizona, these supplies are taxed as a luxury, but for the people who need them to participate fully in daily life, these supplies are necessary. So, although we were hopeful, we are also being realistic, and we know this bill is most likely not going to progress this legislative session. So the question is, where do bills go when they die? All right, well, they get remembered in our minds with a little bit of heat, a lot of determination, and we continue to educate on the need for policy change. We know the individual economic impact on women and girls and other vulnerable populations is worth fighting for, and that's exactly what WFSA intends to do next session. We're not giving up on this bill. So be sure you're following WFSA on our various social media pages for continuous education on the financial impact and inequities related to menstrual poverty and diaper and incontinence supply needs. So that wraps up HB 2534. And now I'd like to introduce to all of you WFSA's Advocacy Coordinator, Michael Abramson III. Michael joined the WFSA team at the beginning of February and has already knocked it out of the park with his advocacy work. Michael will be introducing bills we are supporting, and later will walk us through some resources he's been working on to help you hone in on bills that align with WFSA's mission. So, Michael, it is so wonderful to have you part of our team, and the floor is yours.
So thank you for that lovely introduction, Gauri. And I would also just want to state that I am beyond happy to be in this position and to be able to contribute to all the amazing work that WFSA is already doing. So during this legislative session, we've been supporting a number of maternal health care related bills, such as Senate Bill 1272. SB 1272 seeks to expand access postpartum coverage for 12 months. Currently, in Arizona, people are only covered for 60 days after the birth of their child, and this is simply not enough. Among postpartum persons, roughly 35% of pregnancy-related deaths in Arizona occurred between 42 days and 1 year after delivery, which is well past the current 60-day coverage. Nearly 1,000 more experienced severe, life-threatening complications. This 60-day limit on postpartum coverage forces many families to delay or forego critical emotional and physical care during the postpartum period due to cost. An alarming proportion of Black, Indigenous, and POC birth parents are becoming gravely ill or even dying within a year after pregnancy. An access expansion to 12 months coverage prioritizes and protects the health of Arizona mothers and will reduce the number of postpartum people becoming ill or dying due to a lack of health coverage during the first year after delivery. I also want to give a big recognition and appreciation to Children's Action Alliance, who really spearheaded the SB 1272 efforts. They were able to rally over 20 partners to sign a letter, which was then sent to the governor, urging his support of the access postpartum coverage expansion. And on February 10th, SB 1272 passed the Senate floor during a third read with a 26-2 vote. We will notify our advocates via the We Network and our social media outlets when SB 1272 has further movement in the House of Representatives, and we hope that you'll be able to join us through RTS to show your support for this bill. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Gauri.
Thanks, Michael. I'm really happy we're able to support SB 1272. The U.S. has a poor record in maternal health outcomes when compared to other developing countries, and this is definitely a step in the right direction. As we are also paying attention to other bills that are being introduced, I want to acknowledge that during this legislative session, there have been several bills introduced that either expand or prohibit a woman's access to health care. We understand and recognize that women's access to health care and reproductive rights can be a highly personal and often deeply emotional subject. For now, WFSA will remain focused on the bills we've highlighted today. Our track record shows that we have the most success when we focus on bills that have bipartisan support. However, we know that this may be a subject area where you want to show where you support or oppose. WFSA will be tracking bills, and we will let you know when these bills are being heard, so you can make your voice be heard via the RTS system or other communications with your legislators, as you see best. WFSA already supported a group of bills which seeks to improve women's economic and social strength. But do you have a sense of how many bills were introduced this legislative session? So let's take a moment for another polling question, and let's do a little guessing game. How many bills do you think were introduced this legislative session? Was it 10, 100, 330? Do we need to count? All right, so. Oh, good. Okay, these are good guesses. All right. I'm glad nobody guessed 10. And if you guessed 10, that's okay, because I didn't really know either. All right. But if you guessed too many to count, you are correct. Well, you probably could count it, but no one's got time for that. There were a total of 1,678 House and Senate bills introduced this session. Most of these bills will not have a hearing or make it through the process. So to give you an idea, last session, 1,774 bills were introduced and only 446 were signed into law. Our partners over at Goodman Schwartz Public Affairs are working with us to identify bills that align with WFSA's mission and legislative agenda, and ultimately will help move the needle towards an Arizona where women of all identities can thrive. Now, I'm going to pass it back over to Michael to talk about the advocacy resources he's been working on.
Definitely. Thank you for that, Gauri. So up to this point in the legislative session, we've sent out news blasts to you all regarding individual bills, along with showing you how to interact with your legislators via the request to speak system. While it's important for us to be able to highlight individual bills, it is also important for the WE network to be able to make informed decisions on as many potential bills as possible. In order for that to happen, we've begun to work on some topical fact sheets that highlight trends in the legislature that also align with our goals of improving equity for women and girls in Arizona. So as you can see here, 3 topical fact sheets will be released. The first will include subject matter regarding women's economic impact and social supports. The second will highlight women's health over time and access to healthcare services. And a third topical sheet will highlight efforts being made to protect women from sexual violence. I know I'm excited for us to share these topical fact sheets because I know they'll include some great insights on where the Arizona landscape is currently at regarding women's equity. Each of these informational sheets will include a list of bills that correlate to their specific subject matter, and that should allow WE network members to do a little bit of a deep dive themselves and be able to see the potential impact of some of these pieces, if some of these pieces of this legislation were to pass. So to go ahead and give our advocates a bit of a preview into each of these sections, around women's economic status in our state, a comparative report produced by the Women's Institute of Policy Research has shown that Arizona is one of the worst states in the nation for women's overall economic and social well-being. We do see several bills trying to correct these gaps, like a bill proposed by Representative Blackman, which expands those who are eligible for SNAP benefits in HB 2060. Looking into women's health and healthcare access, that same comparative report revealed that when it comes to women of a lower socioeconomic status, Arizona has previously been recorded as having one of the highest rates of uninsured individuals in the country. We see several bills again addressing this, including the previously mentioned SB 1272 and the focus on extending access postpartum care coverage. And we are very well aware that there are several factors that support a woman's economic well-being. This includes economic and social supports, access to education, employment, childcare, and basic needs like housing. But there's one additional factor related to women's economic wellness that has a significant impact on all of the factors I just listed, and that's women's health and safety. I'd like to take a moment to give recognition to Senator Steele for being a real champion when it comes to protecting women in Arizona from any type of domestic-related violence in the state. She has proposed bills like SB 1216, which doubles the duration of an order of protection from 1 year to 2. We've also seen Representative Longden add very necessary protections and rights of survivors of sexual assault, like with HB 2527. This type of advocacy is so necessary because, as the Arizona Department of Health Services reports, around 1 in 5 women have reported either experiencing an attempted or completed rape of any kind in the state. All of these categories align perfectly with our mission of creating social, political, and economic change for women and girls in Arizona, and we're really looking forward to getting that information out and posted for you to interact with, review, and share. Once they are released, you'll be able to locate them under the Take Action tab on our womengiving.org webpage. And so with this additional information, and so you guys have a highlight of what's coming out, we have some additional polls for you guys to interact with. So first up, of the areas discussed, which area are you most interested in? And if there are any other areas, if you do select other, feel free to put that into the comments. People having a hard time choosing. Okay, great. And that's really for our reference. So we're able to kind of look at that, and I can expand on that a little bit more. But so next, throughout the day, we've referenced our Women's Equity or We Network emails. So go ahead and mark yes or no on this next poll if you've been receiving them. Okay, that's great. It seems like everybody's on board. So the follow-up to that would be, as we've mentioned previously, we've posted several advocacy opportunities within our news blast. So we want to see and ask, have you been completing the action items that we put on our We emails? And this is examples like logging in on request to speak as well. Okay. So for those that answered no, if you haven't been taking action, what do you need to see from the We Network in order to get involved in advocacy? And this is an open-ended question. We do try to make these easy actions for our advocates to get involved in, but again, there's always room for improvement. Okay, thank you for that. And so for this final question, as an organization, we're pretty active on other social media, including Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. But what other social media platforms can we use to engage our advocates? Okay, I love all of those answers. So thank you for interacting with us. This is great information and feedback for us to work with. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it back to Gauri.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for leading us through all that great information and those polling questions. And thank you all for participating in these polling questions. This was really helpful insight about the We Network. We hope to evolve these emails to meet the needs of our advocates and to make them more engaging. So we'll definitely be looking through all the answers you've provided. And just to emphasize, the We Network stands for the Women's Equity Network, as Michael had said. And we use the We acronym because we know advocacy is not a one-person show. And it takes all of us working as a collective we to get things done and to create an Arizona where women and girls have the economic and social supports they need to thrive. And since it seems like everyone in this event has already subscribed to the We Network, which is so exciting, I'm going to give you a challenge. If you can please share a We Network email that you've received, maybe one that really stood out to you, with a friend or a family member, and encourage them to review the information and subscribe, that would be great. All right. They can also visit womengiving.org/takeaction to sign up. And that link, you can see the web address in that orange bar right there. So just as a quick summary, the We Network, we're going to be continuing to send out periodic emails with updates on areas impacting women and girls. We're going to send updates on the legislative session. And we're also going to send updates on WFSA run and supporting bills and opportunities where advocates can engage in calls to action. I also just wanted to give another quick reminder to please register for the Request to Speak system if you haven't already. Anyone can have an account made, and this is one of the best opportunities to advocate and to show your support or opposition for current legislation. And just remember, if you create an account, creating an account using the RTS system does not mean you need to speak, but it does show legislators support and opposition for bills that are being heard. Our partners over at Goodman Schwartz Public Affairs have created an easy online registration page, and they can actually create an account for you. All you need to do is scan the QR code, which is on the slide, and it's going to take you to an account registration page that Goodman Schwartz Public Affairs will then use to set up an account for you. Otherwise, the only other way to register for an RTS account is actually to go to the Capitol. All right, so next, I'd just like to mention the fantastic work the communications team has been doing along with the advocacy team here at WFSA. We've all been working really hard to get toolkit materials out to you, our advocates. To date, we hope you've been receiving our We Network emails and legislative and bill updates. We also hope that you're following us on social media, where we've posted infographics about our bills and other areas that we're following, shareable posts and information as part of our advocacy toolkit. So in addition to the materials you'll find on our social media, you can now access our talking points for friends and family on our advocacy page. So this slide has a screenshot of our Take Action Now page, and you can see the direct link, again, listed in the orange bar at the bottom. So on this Take Action Now page, you'll see a link to join the We Network. You can sign up for an RTS account, and those are the two things I just spoke about. But what I want to highlight is a link to our download talking points. So when you click that, download talking points, you'll get a printer-friendly version of our talking points for friends and family. So now with that, you can have additional education on our bill topics and hopefully use that information during conversations with your friends and family. And as a WFSA advocate, you can introduce and talk about these important issues. Next, I wanted to update everyone on two events coming up. WFSA's Day at the Capitol event, which is set for March 16th. And I also wanted to mention WFSA's annual luncheon, where we will have one day focused on advocacy, which is really exciting. Today, I'll focus on the Day at the Capitol event, but more information about our luncheon can be found on our website, womengiving.org. All right, so we have made the decision to move our Women's Day at the Capitol event to an interactive, engaging, and informative virtual event due to COVID. So we will not be inviting our advocates to join us at the Capitol. We know you all look forward to this event, and we're hoping we can all be together in person to advocate for women and girls at the Capitol in 2023. We'll be sending more information about the Day at the Capitol event during our We Network emails, through our We Network emails. But as a sneak peek, we are planning a fun day with interactive streamed content from the Capitol. We'll be streaming information videos, and we'll also have opportunities throughout the day to take action and advocate for women and girls. So here are 3 steps you can take now to make sure you will be with us virtually for the Day at the Capitol event, which is set for March 16th. So the first one, make sure you're receiving our We Network emails, and also spread the word about those emails and feel free to share. We'll be sending out updates and also RSVP links through that. You can follow us on social media to join the event on the day from the comfort of your home, work, or wherever you are, hopefully on a beach somewhere. That'd be nice. Be sure to RSVP for the virtual Day at the Capitol event and set a reminder on your calendars for March 16th to join us. Our RSVP will be available on our website shortly. So before we wrap up and open the chat up to questions, I sincerely want to give a huge shout out to Emma Fryer, WFSA's Chief Strategy Officer, Ashley James, WFSA's Director of Communications, and Anita Chavarin, WFSA's Communications Coordinator, for all their work behind the scenes to make this work accessible to you. Thank you again to Michael for the awesome teamwork. A huge thank you to Goodman Schwartz Public Affairs team. Stuart Goodman and Brandy Patron could not be with us today as they are busy at the Capitol, but thank you, Emily, for being here and representing Goodman Schwartz Public Affairs and being such a valued partner. And of course, thank you so much to all our long-term and new advocates. We are taking steps in the right direction to make big changes for women and girls throughout Arizona. Thank you for joining these efforts. It cannot be done without you. So wholeheartedly appreciate you and all your efforts. So with that, we'd love to open it up for some questions. We'd love to learn about advocacy priorities that are important to you, so we can continue to do our research and legislate for changes that matter most. So we'll open up the question to some chat for some questions. If you have a question related to WFSA's legislation and priorities, or possibly questions about the legislative session, please enter them into the poll. Since we are a little bit limited on time, we're going to answer a few questions now, but then we'll also be sending out like a Q&A document via the We Network email to make sure we're answering everyone's questions and also getting that information out there for everyone to refer back to later on. So with that, I think everyone's going to be joining us. There we go. Michael, Emily, thank you both. I'm going to start off, if that's okay, with the question. And so I guess this question's for Emily. Emily, can you give us some insight on the budget process and if HB 2111, which seeks to reinvest money into Healthy Families Arizona program, will be part of that budgeting process?
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about the budget process earlier, but specifically to HB 2111, that bill has an appropriation in the bill, so it will eventually become part of that larger budget discussion. There comes a point in session where all bills that have money attached to them will stop in the regular legislative process and then become part of that budget process that legislators and the governor negotiate and just get folded into that bigger conversation.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And actually, Emily, I happen to have a follow-up question for you as well. So I know I spoke a little bit that SB 1272 had passed through the Senate, but I'm actually hearing that it also made some additional progress. So would you be able to speak to that as well?
Absolutely. So it did pass through the Senate. And as we talked about, the alternate chambers will start having committee hearings next week for continuing 4 weeks. And it's great news. SB 1272 was put on the very first House Health and Human Services agenda. So that will get a hearing in that committee next Monday.
Oh, that's exciting. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Great. So we have one question, not a question, but a thank you for the work you do. Well, thank you for joining us in the work that we do. Again, we can't do it without you, our advocates. So thank you so much. All right, another question. Great. How can the public support efforts to get HB 2534? So as a reminder, HB 2534 seeks to end state sales tax on feminine hygiene products and incontinence supplies. Emily, can I refer this one to you?
Sure. Happy to take it on. So, as I kind of covered in my legislative update, at this point, if the bill has not been heard in committee, which it has not, it's effectively dead for this legislative session. But I want to reiterate what Gauri said in her update, which is that we're going to continue the conversation over the interim, keep the conversation around it going, the buzz, so that hopefully we can get this reintroduced next legislative session and work hard to get it on an agenda next year.
Yeah. And I'll just add to that. Just today, I was in a Facebook community group when someone was asking for donations of feminine hygiene products for a nonprofit they're working with. And of course, I had to interject, it's been 4 years since a bill, 4 years. I just want to make sure I'm quoting that correctly. 4 years, a similar style bill has been introduced to the legislature to end taxes on feminine hygiene products. And each year we're told no. And so I think the more people hear about this and recognize like these efforts are happening, but are not being heard in committees or maybe being heard committees, but then end up not going anywhere. It's our responsibility to keep sharing the news about it and keep talking about it and making this a priority. Any other questions? I don't think we have any other questions. If anyone has questions later, you can always comment on our Facebook page under this live stream event, which will be posted. Email the Women's Foundation. You can email me directly. My email is ggladish, GGLADISH @womengiving.org. And if we don't have any more questions, I just want to say thank you again for your support. Thank you for being here today. Thank you, Emily and the Goodman Schwartz Public Affairs team. Thank you for everyone here at WFSA and the entire team for this advocacy support. And with that, we'll call it a day. Not really. It's only 1 o'clock. There's more work to be done today.